cheap AliExpress SSDs, they are coming in with such good prices. Now, people have told me, look, Brian, I want to see a video on testing these things out. And just let me put the camera down for a sec. Just got to quickly take my mic off. Just grab these SSDs. Just quickly run around in circles for you guys. But what we got right here with AliExpress is a 120 gigabyte solution. They can come as anywhere as low as $15 shipped worldwide. And then we've got 1 terabytes coming in for a little over $70, which makes it extremely cheap for SSD-like storage. Now make no mistake, the costs have to be cut somewhere. So upon pulling these drives apart, we can see that there's no burst bank portion, and that's what I call the portion that's faster than the regular storage flash that makes up the majority of this 1 terabyte. So for instance, you'll either get it in DDR3 or in Intel, like when we looked at their new SSDs with QLC-based NAND, they're using SLC burst banks to get faster speeds out of the SSDs. These are getting none of that burst bank faster portion, so all you're getting is the 1 terabyte flash, which I think in this case is from Toshiba, and the controller on board. So what we're going to do is run through some basic tests here today and see how they perform and whether or not they're worth it for your money, and if so, who's it for exactly. Let's roll these tests around Tech Yes City. If you are chasing some of the best motherboards money can buy, then the ASRock Z390 Phantom Gaming X has it all, with Wi-Fi 6, 2.5G LAN, and the ability to support 9th and 8th gen processors from Intel, including the new 9900KS, which goes up to 5 GHz on all 8 cores. Then this motherboard has it all. Links in the description below to find out more. So we now just finished testing up all these SSDs, and the verdict with this one is going to be pretty much cut and dry as to who these SSDs are for. Now we did have some King spec SSDs, which I did use in a recent couple of builds that I've done here on the channel. And then I've got the X-Star SSDs, which have been coming in for a while now. I use them when I'm flipping PCs. And so we've got 1 terabyte solutions here. We've got a SATA 3 solution, an M.2 SATA solution, and then we've also got a 512 gigabyte from King spec, and then a 120 gigabyte on the test bed from X-Star as well. And the numbers just show that basically what's going on here is, as we said in the intro, since there is no faster burst portion on these SSDs, all you're getting is now the raw performance of the Toshiba TLC NAND-based flash on board these drives. So what that means is when we pull up the results here, we've got the read and write speeds that aren't really that impressive for SSDs. I have seen SSDs even years and years ago that I've reviewed that beat out these speeds quite comfortably. But the funny thing is the costs of these drives are so low, and then when we look at the 4K random read and writes, they're still much faster than that of hard drives. And now the funny thing is about the King spec SSD, and the reason I threw this in is because I already filled it up with games, and it was pretty much only had 20% room left. So it is important to run this King spec test to show you that if you do fill up these drives, they will perform a little bit slower, especially on the sequential write side of things over time. So we saw it went down to like 50 megabytes per second writes, which is pretty much getting around that of an older hard drive, but the read speeds were still holding up pretty well. So now looking closer at these graphs, we can see with the MX500, things are looking a lot better in this graph. It is a drive that performs, especially on the 4K random read and writes, a lot better than all these other contenders here that don't have that burst caching portion on board. However, it does come in at $108 US, and here's another thing too. That's if you can get access to that 108 USD price tag. A lot of people who don't live in Australia and also don't live in the US, for example, can't get prices like this with the MX500. So it does make that AliExpress SSD at its current price point not only coming in cheaper for the same amount of storage, but also accessed worldwide. It does make that sort of argument of where do you want to go with these drives? For me personally, if I was in the market for a new SSD, I would lean towards the MX500. I think giving those extra speeds, especially for general usage, is a big thing to consider, and it's a great gateway SSD if you want to jump into things like video editing or if you want to jump into anything semi-serious when it comes to work, because you're going to get better speeds, especially when it comes to the short-term transfers, which does make up a majority of the usage even in the workstation scene. They're talking a little bit more about those 4K random read and writes, and what we're seeing here is although they don't compete that well against the MX500, they're still absolutely fine for everyday usage. And so 4K read and writes are very slow on a hard drive to the point of 1 megabyte or 2 megabytes per second. And when you change to an SSD, it's this big increase in these speeds that really increase the just general snappiness and usage of desktops and makes it just that much better. Of course, the sequential reads are better when you're loading up your games, for instance, and that's going to be faster on an SSD than it is on a hard drive. But when it comes to actually getting the most out of an SSD, 4K random read and writes are very important. And so that's going to make a huge difference for when you're just using your computer for normal gaming things or just normal desktop things, where the difference can be over tenfold, even on the worst case scenario, which was the King spec, which was loaded up. So now these drives, they are coming in at their price point, and that is they're gonna be great for general users and gamers that don't need to do heavy file transfers day in, day out. And this is where we're gonna look on the other side of the fence, where if you are looking to get into video editing, for example, or if you are looking for something to put inside a NAS, these drives are definitely not going to be it. So for instance, I edit 4K videos day in, day out for you guys, and I need something like a Samsung Pro in my machine that has consistently good transfer speeds, even well up into the 100 gigabyte region, because if I didn't, then I'd just be editing my videos a lot slower. And of course, when you load these things up day in, day out with over 100 gigabytes a day, they could fail a lot quicker than a Samsung Pro with much better NAND flash and better components on board. So there's that element to it. Basically, you get what you pay for with these SSDs, in that if all you are doing is gaming and all you're doing is browsing the net and stuff like that, you're going to be getting a lot of value there because they're already cheap to begin with. But if we're looking to do anything professional or anything heavy file transfer wise, you may even be losing your money because you get really good warranties on the more expensive stuff, and you also get much faster transfer speeds. So in a nutshell, with these cheap AliExpress SSDs, they are cost effective for the particular target audience. And I gotta say, that target audience is probably most likely going to be a lot of people, the majority of end user desktop PC users. For instance, if I wasn't editing YouTube videos, then I'd be going with something like this, the 1 terabyte version, and having happy days as a PC gamer. And with that aside, let us know your thoughts and opinions in the comments section below about these cheap AliExpress SSDs. Love reading your thoughts and opinions as always. And we've also got the comment of the day, which it's not the question of the day this time around, but it is something that's important to talk about with SSDs and hard drives. And basically the gist of this comment comes down to drive temperatures being low. He says it's not really so much how much the drives are used for, it's more so the temperatures they have been run at. And I completely agree with this comment. For instance, when I was copying files over to a 3 terabyte hard drive that I had 3 years ago in summer, I pretty much just clonked the drive out. It was incredible because I was copying over a lot of files. It was a really hot day. I think it went up to close to 40 degrees Celsius, and the hard drive was copying a lot of files. I was like probably copying around 2 terabytes worth of files over to that drive, and it just clonked out. And I've had this happen once before, about 5 or 6 years ago as well. So temperatures on really hot days, if you're transferring files and stuff like that, definitely be careful. But also on that note, try to keep your drives cool as a general use practice. For instance, whatever case I use nowadays, I make sure that my drives are actively cooled if they're hard drives, and if they're SSDs, I make sure that they're in a decent environment and that they're not in some enclosed toaster oven box, because that can play an important role in terms of how long your drives are going to last and whether or not they clonk out or not. So remember, drive temperatures and keeping those drives cool is a very important thing. And then with that aside, I'll catch you guys in another tech video very soon. If you've made it this far and you haven't subbed already, make sure to if you've watched this far and you're enjoying the content, you want to see it the moment it drops, the sub button is down there, and then you ring the bell, make sure the notification's on, and you'll get the videos as soon as they're out here at Tech Yes City. And with that aside, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out for now. Bye.